To remove the rear sway bar, the first thing we're going to do is remove the 4 socket head bolts that mount the sway bar to the rear subframe. These are 6mm socket head bolts or 6mm Allen head bolts. Okay. In order to remove the rear sway bar, you have to remove these 2 bolts on either side of the vehicle, and that will allow the whole sway bar assembly to be twisted out from underneath of the car. The bolt head is 17mm, and the nut on the bottom is a 13mm. Bear that in mind as you get your tools out. On either side of the sway bar drop links. This is a sway bar drop link. This is the sway bar. 2 nuts holding the assembly to the lower control arm, which is this big aluminum piece. Black part is your axle or drive shaft. An area where people have a lot of problem with their sway bars, and this is where you'll hear a lot of the talk of creaking, is that they fail to prepare and mount them properly. These are drop links. These attach to the lower control arm of the rear suspension and then attach to the sway bar. This is the softest setting of your sway bar towards the end. This is the stiffest setting of your sway bar towards the front. Think of it as a lever. When you press down on a long lever, you have to press further, but it's easier. If you press down on a short lever, it's tougher, but you don't have to press as far to get as much movement. What we are going to do here is, firstly, noting the position of the washers, 1 washer between the bolt head and the sway bar, 1 washer between the sway bar and the drop link, 1 washer between the drop link and the nut. We are going to remove these on either side. And mount these to the lower control arm prior to mounting the actual bar itself. However, there's another thing that we need to do. Although ground control bushings come with what is called a Zerk fitting, which allows one to use a grease gun to insert grease into the frame mounted part of the sway bar, one still has to prime the sway bar and the inner and outer portion of the sway bar bushing with grease in order to get started. Otherwise, there is really too tight a fitment between the sway bar and the bushing, and the grease never fully seats around here, and that's where a lot of the squeaking comes from. So, simply grab your grease gun or a handful of grease if you're using a tub. And I suggest using a good quality grease like Redline or Mobil 1. Some people even use marine grease. I think that, maybe a little bit over the edge, but it won't hurt anything. And simply grease approximately where the bushing will fit around the entire arm. Next, gang some more grease, and don't worry about using too much, because any excess will literally ooze out of the side when the bar is mounted, and you can simply wipe it off with a paper towel. Put grease completely around the inside of the sway bar bushing. Then put the bushing over the sway bar itself, using yet more grease. Place grease around the outer surface of the bushing, the round part, not the square part that goes against the frame, although it wouldn't hurt anything if you did. Here, I'll even put some on a square portion, like most of you guys likely will do. And finally, using yet more grease, you're probably noticing a pattern here. Put grease all inside of the sway bar to subframe mount. That is how one primes the rear sway bar, so that it will be as noise-free and operate as freely as possible. After removing the rear sway bar, take off the bracket that went to the lower control arm, and utilizing the supplied material, bolt and nut, hook up the new drop links. One of the most important things when you're putting any type of threaded fastener into a female receptacle is to be sure that you have thread equivalent to the width, the diameter of the thread. And this is just, it's a very basic guideline to ensure integrity and that the bolt is not being overstressed. What I like to do is put the bolt next to the hole and then mark it with an ink pen so that I can easily tell when I have taken out the bolt too far and I no longer can require on its integrity. On the stock sway bar mounting bracket, remove it from the drop link. Remember, the silver piece is a drop link, black piece is a sway bar. This is the mount, the sway bar mount to the rear subframe. Two 13mm head wrenches, and just remove the bolt, but be sure to turn it the proper way, unlike what I just did. Taking the ground control adjustable drop link, you'll notice it's threaded on the bottom. On the silver side, insert the red bushings into the eye. Holding the assembly together, place it into the lower control arm bracket that you removed from the previous sway bar, your standard sway bar. Insert the bolt through. Apply a little bit of dressing to the threads, as always. And secure the nut.